Hey guys, tonight we're diving into a world where grime meets genius, where the ancient city of Babylon smells of dust, sweat, and believe it or not, the world's first soap. Picture yourself standing on a sun-baked street in 2800 BC, the Tigris River glinting nearby, clay tablets clinking in merchants' hands. The air is thick with the scent of barley, smoke, and something oddly clean, like a whiff of fresh laundry in a desert. You're about to uncover how humans first figured out how to scrub away the day's dirt. But fair warning, if you think your shower gel's a lifesaver, surviving Babylon's hygiene hacks might make you rethink clean. So before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. Drop a comment with your location and local time. I'm curious where you're drifting off from tonight. Now dim the lights, maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum, and let's ease into tonight's journey together. You're trudging through Babylon's bustling streets, sandals slapping against packed earth, the heat pressing down like a heavy blanket. Around you, the city hums. Vendors hawk bread, kids dart through alleys, and priests mutter prayers to distant gods. Babylon, around 2800 BC, is a powerhouse, a cradle of civilization where writing, math, and law are taking shape. But let's be real, it's also a sweaty, dusty place. People work hard, hauling goods, weaving cloth, or tending livestock, and they're caked in grime by sundown. Bathing in the river helps, but it's not enough. You notice folks rubbing their skin with oils or scraping it with stones, chasing that elusive feeling of clean. Enter the world's first soap, born not from some grand invention, but from a happy accident in a workshop just around the corner. This is where history gets sudsy. The mainstream fact, soap was born in Babylon around 2800 BC, crafted from a mix of wood ash and animal fat. No one wrote Eureka on a clay tablet, but someone noticed that when ash from fire pits mingled with melted fat, maybe from a cooking mishap, it formed a goopy substance that lifted dirt like magic. You can imagine the first person who tried it scrubbing their hands and staring in awe as the grime rinsed away. Historians still argue whether this was a deliberate recipe or just a lucky mistake, but the result changed hygiene forever. You're standing at the edge of this discovery, watching a city that smells of progress, even if it's a bit ripe. Now let's talk quirky. Babylonians weren't just washing with soak, they were slathering on some wild skincare. Alongside their ash and fat mix, they used concoctions like crocodile dung mixed with milk as a face mask. No joke! You're picturing a Babylonian noble smoothing that onto their cheeks, hoping for a glow, and you're wondering if your drugstore cleanser's really so bad. The stuff worked, sort of, because the alkaline dung exfoliated like a gritty spa treatment. You wince, but they swore by it. Back then, clean skin wasn't just about vanity. It signaled status. If you could afford to smell less like a sheep pen, you were kind of a big deal. You pause by a market stall, watching a woman barter for a lump of this early soap. It's not the fragrant bar you know today. No lavender or coconut vibes here. It's a brownish, lumpy paste, probably stored in a clay jar, smelling faintly of ash and animal. You're tempted to try it, but the texture's like wet clay, and you're not sure your 21st century skin could handle it. Still, this stuff is revolutionary. It's not just cleaning bodies, it's washing clothes too. You see a weaver nearby, scrubbing a wool tunic in a basin, the water turning murky as the soap does its job. Babylon's figuring out hygiene, and you're witnessing the first bubbles of a cleaner world. But let's not romanticize too much. Making soap back then was no spa day. You're catching whiffs of charred wood and boiled fat, and the process looks messy. Think greasy pots and smoky fires. Workers, probably apprentices or laborers, are stirring vats in a workshop you're about to visit. The air's thick, the labor's tough, and you're grateful for your modern shower. Yet, this is where it all began. Babylon soap wasn't just a product, it was a spark. It spread from here, carried by traders and travelers, to other corners of the ancient world. You're standing at ground zero, where a simple mix of ash and fat started a hygiene revolution that's still lathering up today. As you wander toward the workshop, you can't help but smirk. Babylonians thought they were fancy with their soap, but they'd lose their minds over your body wash's exfoliating microbeads. Still, they laid the groundwork. You're about to step into the heart of this discovery, where sweaty workers and smoky fires birth something you take for granted every day. Ready to see how they did it? The workshop's just ahead, and the smell's getting stronger.
You push through a low doorway into a cramped, smoky workshop, the air heavy with the scent of burning wood and something greasier, like a kitchen after a feast gone wrong. The heat hits you like a wave, and you squint through the haze to see workers hunched over clay pots, their hands slick with sweat and fat. This is it, the birthplace of the world's first soap, right here in Babylon around 2800 BC. You're watching history bubble up, literally, as these folks mix wood ash and animal fat into a goopy paste that'll change how humans clean. It's not glamorous, but it's genius, and you're close enough to feel the grit of ash on your skin just standing here. The workshop's a mess of activity. You see a burly man, probably an apprentice, stirring a bubbling vat with a wooden paddle. The mixture inside looks like a bad porridge, grayish, lumpy, and steaming. He's pouring in ash, scraped from the fire pits where they burn hardwood, and it fizzes faintly as it hits the fat, rendered from sheep or goats. This is the mainstream fact. Soap in Babylon was made by combining alkaline ash with animal fat, creating a basic chemical reaction called saponification. No one here knows the word, but they've cracked the code. The fat and ash bond, forming a substance that lifts dirt and grease when mixed with water. You're tempted to whisper, "Science," but they'd probably think you're chanting to a weird god. Now here's the quirky bit. These workers aren't just cooking up soap. They're dodging some wild workplace hazards. One wrong move and that boiling fat could splash, leaving burns that'd make you rethink your desk job. Worse, some workshops used human hair or bone ash in their mix, thinking it added extra cleansing power. You're gagging a bit, imagining the smell, but to them, it's just another day at the office. Historians still argue whether these odd ingredients were common or just experimental flops, but the thought of hair soap makes you glad for your minty shampoo back home. You step closer, dodging a pile of ash swept into a corner. The workers don't notice you. They're too busy arguing over the mix. One guy's yelling that the fat's too old, another's insisting they need more ash for a thicker batch. It's chaotic, but there's a rhythm to it, like a recipe passed down through whispers and trial and error. You can't help but smirk. Modern soap factories have robots and quality control, but these folks are eyeballing it, stirring until the goo feels right. You're half expecting one to taste it, but thankfully they stick to smearing it on a scrap of cloth to test it. Spoiler, it works, leaving the cloth cleaner than your gym socks after a rinse. The process is slow, and you're feeling the heat now, sweat trickling down your back. The fat comes from slaughtered animals, boiled down until it's liquid, and the ash is collected from fires that never stop burning in Babylon's busy hearths. You notice a woman nearby, her hands rough from handling the stuff, shaping the finished soap into small, uneven lumps. They'll dry these into hard cakes, ready for market. You're imagining trying to sell this at a modern store. Good luck convincing anyone to buy Babylonian ash lump over a scented bath bomb. But here's the magic. This soap isn't just a product. It's a game changer. You see a worker scrub his hands in a basin, the water turning cloudy as dirt lifts away. He's grinning, probably because he doesn't smell like a barnyard anymore. This workshop, smoky and chaotic as it is ground zero for hygiene. You're watching them perfect a mix that'll spread beyond these walls, carried by traders along dusty roads to distant cities. It's not just about clean hands. It's about a culture starting to value cleanliness in a way that feels almost modern. As you linger, you catch a whiff of the soap itself. It's not exactly pleasant. Think wet dog with a hint of fire comper, but it's doing the job. You're tempted to grab a lump and try it, but the thought of that hair in the mix rumor stops you cold. Instead, you watch the workers pack the soap into jars ready for the market you passed earlier. You're starting to see how this stuff fits into Babylon's daily grind, and you're curious about how regular folks use it. The street outside is calling, where people are washing clothes and maybe even dreaming of softer skin. Time to step back into the city and see soap in action. You step back into Babylon's sunlit streets, the workshop's smoky haze clinging to your clothes like a bad souvenir. The city pulses around you, merchants haggling, donkeys braying, and the Tigris River shimmering in the distance. You're curious now, weaving through the crowd, about how this newfangled soap fits into the daily grind of 2800 BC. People here aren't just splashing river water anymore, they're using that ashy, fatty paste you saw bubbling in the workshop. You're about to see it in action, cleaning clothes and soothing skin, and trust me, it's a far cry from your bubbly shower routine. You pause by a courtyard where a group of women kneel by a wide clay basin, scrubbing piles of wool tunics. The water's murky, but the soap, those lumpy, grayish cakes, cuts through the grime like a charm. You watch one woman rub a tunic with a soap lump, her hands moving in quick, practiced circles. The fabric, once stained with dirt and oil, starts to look almost respectable. This is the mainstream fact. Babylonians used soap not just for their bodies, but for laundry, making their clothes cleaner than ever before. It's a big deal in a city where dust and sweat are daily enemies, and you're impressed, even if the soap smells like a campfire gone wrong. But here's the quirky twist. Not everyone's using soap the same way. You spot a man nearby, probably a trader, smearing a thin layer of the stuff on his arms, not to wash, but to soothe his sun-scorched skin. Babylonians believed soap could calm irritation, like an ancient version of aloe vera. Some even mixed it with herbs or oils, thinking it'd make their skin glow like the moon goddess they worshipped. You're chuckling, imagining a Babylonian influencer posting about ash-fat skincare hacks. Historians still argue whether this was a common practice or just a fad among the elite. But either way, it's wild to think soap doubled as a proto-moisturizer. You wander closer to the basin, catching the chatter of the women. They're gossiping about a neighbor who swears by soap for her hair, claiming it makes it shinier than river mud. You're skeptical. Mud was the old-school shampoo here, and you're not sure soap's an upgrade. Still, you see the appeal. Clean clothes and smooth skin are status symbols in Babylon. If you're rocking a spotless tunic or skin that doesn't crack in the desert heat, you're basically saying, "I've got my life together." You're tempted to join them, but the thought of rubbing that gritty soap on your face makes you wince. Nearby, a kid runs by, splashing water from a jug, and you dodge just in time. It's a reminder of how precious water is here. Soap makes it work harder, stretching every drop to clean more effectively. You notice a weaver folding a freshly washed cloth, its rough wool looking softer, almost inviting. The soap's doing more than cleaning. It's changing how people live. Families can wear cleaner clothes. Priests can perform rituals without smelling like yesterday's sacrifice. And even laborers can feel a bit more human after a long day. You're starting to get why this stuff caught on. But let's not get too cozy. Washing in Babylon's no spa day. The soap's harsh, sometimes leaving skin red or clothes stiff if not rinsed well. You see a woman grimace as she wrings out a tunic, muttering about the soap's bite. It's not perfect, but it's a start. You're also noticing the labor behind it, hauling water from the river, scrubbing by hand, and dealing with that ashy smell. You're grateful for your washing machine, but you can't help admiring their grit. These folks are making do with what they've got, and it's working. As you move through the crowd, you spot a merchant packing soap lumps into a basket, probably headed to a market stall. It's not just a local thing. Word of this stuff is spreading. You're curious about where it's going next, how it's jumping from Babylon to other cities. The river's edge is just ahead, where traders load boats with goods, maybe even that soap you saw made. You're ready to follow its path, see how this lumpy paste starts ripples across the ancient world. You're standing by the Tigris River now, the water lapping at the muddy banks as boats bob in the golden light of late afternoon. Babylon's behind you, its dust and noise fading, but the scent of that ashy soap lingers in your memory, like a campfire you can't unsmell. You're watching traders load clay jars onto reed boats, some likely packed with those lumpy soap cakes you saw in the workshop. This isn't just a local fad anymore. Soap's starting to travel, hitching rides with merchants to distant lands. You're about to trace its journey, seeing how Babylon's gritty invention ripples out to neighboring cultures, changing their daily grind. The river's a highway in 2800 BC, buzzing with boats carrying grain, textiles, and now this weird new cleaning paste. You spot a trader, his beard braided with beads, haggling over a jar of soap with a man from Sumer, a city-state downstream. The mainstream fact is clear. Soap, born in Babylon around 2800 BC, spread through trade networks across Mesopotamia and beyond. Merchants carried it to places like Ur, Elam, and even early Egyptian settlements, where people were just as grimy and eager for something to cut through the dirt. You're watching the seeds of a hygiene revolution float down the river, one jar at a time. Here's the quirky bit, though. Some traders weren't just selling soap, they were hyping it like ancient influencers. You overhear one boasting that his soap cleans like the god's own hands, claiming it was blessed by Ishtar herself. You're rolling your eyes, but the buyer's eating it up, trading a sack of barley for a single lump. Historians still argue whether these claims were pure marketing or if some cultures genuinely tied soap to religious rituals, like purifying before temple offerings. Either way, you're amused, imagining a Babylonian ad campaign with clay tablet slogans like "Lather up, live divine." You're wandering along the riverbank, dodging a flock of geese that definitely don't use soap. The traders' boats are headed to places you've only read about in history books, cities where people are starting to hear about this miraculous paste. In Sumer, they're using it to scrub sacred garments for priests, making sure their gods aren't offended by sweaty robes. In Elam, warriors are trying it to clean wounds, hoping it'll keep infections at bay. You're impressed by how fast word spreads, even without X or a hashtag. It's all word of mouth, carried by dusty travelers who swear by the stuff. But let's not get too romantic. Trading soap isn't all smooth sailing. You see a boatman cursing as a jar cracks, leaking its gooey contents into the river. Soap's heavy, fragile to transport, and not exactly cheap. Animal fat and ash take time to gather. You're wondering how much a lump costs in barley or copper, but the traders aren't spilling. Still, demand's growing. You overhear a woman from a northern tribe, her accent thick, asking for that Babylonian cleaning stuff. She's heard it makes laundry easier, and you can't help but grin thinking of your own laundry pile back home. The river's current pulls your attention, a reminder of how soap's moving beyond Babylon's walls. You're picturing it reaching Egypt, where they'll mix it with natron, their own salty cleaner, or maybe Anatolia, where Hittites will tweak the recipe. It's not just a product, it's an idea. Cleanliness matters. You're starting to see how Babylon's invention is knitting together cultures, one scrubbed tunic at a time. But it's not all rosy. Some places stick to their old ways, like using clay or plant saps, scoffing at Babylon's fancy soap. You're chuckling, imagining a Mesopotamian TikTok debate, hashtag soap versus clay. As you linger by the river, the sun dips lower, painting the water orange. You're curious about how soap changes over time, how it evolves from this gritty paste to the fragrant bars you know. The boats are drifting out of sight, carrying Babylon's secret to new horizons. You're ready to fast forward to see how this ancient lather stacks up against the soaps of centuries later. The city's still humming behind you, but the future's calling, and it smells a lot fresher.
You're blinking in the soft glow of a new era, leaving Babylon's dusty riverside behind as time swirls forward like water down a drain. It's the 19th century now, and you're standing in a bustling European market, the air thick with the scent of lavender, rosewater, and, yep, soap. But not the gritty, ashy lump you remember from 2800 BC. These bars are smooth, fragrant, and wrapped in paper like little gifts. You're here to compare Babylon's crude invention with the modern soaps that have taken over, transforming hygiene into something almost luxurious. The contrast is wild, and you're about to dive into how soap went from a smoky workshop to a scented obsession. Back in Babylon, you saw soap born from necessity,
wood ash and animal fat mixed to tackle dirt and sweat. Fast forward to the 1800s, and soaps had a serious glow-up. The mainstream fact hits you like a whiff of jasmine. Modern soap as we know it emerged in the 19th century with added fragrances and refined production. Chemists figured out how to make it consistent, using lye and oils, and factories churned it out for the masses. You're holding a bar now, its surface creamy and scented with herbs, a far cry from the gritty paste that made Babylonians cheer. It's like comparing a clay tablet to your smartphone. But here's the quickie tidbit. Some 19th century soaps came with bizarre marketing claims. You spot a stall selling magnetic soap, supposedly infused with healing energies to cure everything from acne to bad luck. You're snickering, imagining a Victorian lady rubbing it on her face, hoping for a miracle. Historians still argue whether these claims were just clever scams or if people genuinely believed soap could be magical, but it's clear the hype was real. You're tempted to buy a bar just to see if it sparks joy, or maybe static electricity. You wander through the market, dodging a kid hawking soap with a shout of, "Smell like a lord!" The bars here are a game changer, not just for the rich, but for everyone. Industrial advances mean soap's cheaper now, thanks to factories using vegetable oils like palm or olive instead of animal fat. You're picturing Babylon's workers gawking at these neat, fragrant rectangles, wondering why anyone needs soap to smell like flowers. But it's not just about scent. Cleanliness is becoming a cultural obsession. You see women scrubbing laundry with soap that lathers like a dream, and men shaving with creamy suds, a ritual Babylonians couldn't even imagine. Let's be real though, modern soap's not perfect. You overhear a customer grumbling about a bar that's too harsh, drying her skin like a desert wind. It's a reminder of Babylon's gritty soap, which could leave you red and raw if you weren't careful. But now you've got options. Soaps for sensitive skin, soaps for babies, even soaps for your dog. You're chuckling thinking of that crocodile dung face mask from Babylon. These folks would faint at the thought. Still, the core idea is the same. Mix an alkali with fat, add water, and watch dirt vanish. Science hasn't changed, just gotten fancier. You pause by a perfumer's stall, where a woman's wrapping a soap bar in lavender-scented paper. It's a small luxury, but it's everywhere. Shops, homes, even hospitals, where soap is starting to save lives by cutting infections. You're struck by how Babylon's invention, born in a smoky workshop, laid the groundwork for this. Traders carried it across rivers, cultures tweaked it, and now it's a daily ritual. You're wondering how Babylonians would react to this market, where soap is not just for cleaning, but for feeling good. Would they laugh at the floral scents or hoard every bar? As the market hums around you, the sun's dipping low, casting long shadows. You're starting to see soap's bigger story. Not just a product, but a thread tying ancient grit to modern comfort. You're ready to step back and reflect on its lasting impact. How this simple mix of ash and fat became a cornerstone of hygiene. The market's fading, but the scent of lavender lingers, pulling you toward the final chapter of this sudsy saga.
The market's clamor fades as you step into a quieter space, the world softening around you like a warm bath. You're no longer bound by time, drifting between Babylon's dusty workshops and the fragrant soap stalls of the 19th century. Now you're standing in a timeless glow, reflecting on soap's enduring legacy, how that gritty paste from 2800 BC became a cornerstone of hygiene and culture worldwide. It's a humble invention, born from ash and fat, but its impact is massive, lathering up lives from ancient Mesopotamia to your own bathroom. You're here to trace that thread, to see how soap's ripples still touch you today. Let's start with the big picture. The mainstream fact is undeniable. Soap, first crafted in Babylon around 2800 BC, revolutionized hygiene by making cleanliness accessible. It wasn't just about scrubbing dirt, it was about health, dignity, and even social status. You're picturing those Babylonian women by the river, washing tunics with pride. And now you see hospitals using soap to fight germs, saving countless lives.
From clay jars to supermarket shelves, soap's been a quiet hero, cutting through grease and grime across millennia. You're almost tempted to give that lumpy Babylonian soap a high five, but it'd probably leave your hands sticky. Now for the quirky bit. Did you know some ancient cultures used soap in rituals, not just for washing? In Babylon, priests might have smeared it on sacred cloths, believing it purified offerings for the gods. Fast forward, and you find echoes of this in medieval Europe, where holy soaps were blessed for baptisms. You're chuckling, imagining a priest dunking a bar of lavender soap into holy water, but it shows how soap became more than a cleaner. It carried symbolic weight. Historians still argue whether Babylonians saw soap as divine or just practical, but you're leaning toward practical, given the crocodile dung skincare fads you've heard about. You're drifting now, imagining soap's journey through time. It spread from Babylon's rivers to Egypt, Greece, and Rome, each culture tweaking the recipe. Olive oil here, herbs there. By the Middle Ages, soap guilds in Europe were like secret societies, guarding their formulas like alchemists. You're smirking, picturing a medieval soap maker whispering, "Add more tallow, but tell no one." Today, soap's everywhere. Liquid, bar, even foam dispensers in every public restroom. You're thinking of your own shower, the bottle of body wash you barely notice, and how it's a direct descendant of that smoky workshop you visited. It's wild how something so ordinary carries 4,800 years of history. But let's slow down, because this is where the story gets soft and sleepy. Soap's legacy isn't just about clean hands or fresh laundry, it's about comfort, routine, the small rituals that make you feel human. You're picturing a long day. Maybe you're dusty from work like a Babylonian laborer, or stressed from emails. Nothing a warm shower can't fix. That lather, that moment of calm, traces back to those early experiments with ash and fat. You're feeling a little cozy now, aren't you? The world's still spinning, but soap's a constant, a reminder that humans have always chased a little cleanliness, a little peace. You're starting to drift, the edges of the story blurring like steam on a bathroom mirror. Soap's impact feels eternal. Hospitals, homes, even space stations stock it. You're imagining an astronaut floating with a no-rinse soap, a nod to Babylon's ingenuity. But it's not just about utility, it's about connection. Every culture, every era has its own version of soap, from gritty lumps to rose-scented bars. You're smiling, thinking of that magnetic soap sales pitch in the 19th century market, and how even now, ads promise glowing skin or 24-hour freshness. Some things never change. As the world quiets, you're sinking deeper into this moment. The Tigris River, the workshop smoke, the lavender stalls, they're fading into a gentle hum. You're safe, clean, wrapped in the warmth of a story that's carried humanity forward. Let the day's worries slip away, like dirt under a warm rinse. The world's still out there, but for now it's just you, this soft narrative, and the whisper of a cleaner tomorrow. Sleep's calling, and you're ready to drift off, carried by the lather of history.